Welcome to the Illuminate podcast. I'm your host, Cindy Minetto. Illuminate is a place to gather together in community where I can share anything that's lighting me up so they can light you up too. We're going to learn together from others and their stories so that each of us can shine a little bit brighter every day. As we fill our own lights, we can spread that light to others and make the world a more beautiful place. Hi, Sarah. Welcome.
Hi.
I'm so happy you're here.
Me too.
So Sarah is another person, when I was thinking about starting this podcast, I was like, she must come on at least once, maybe 100 times, because Sarah is my personal, I usually say my spiritual guru and coach. But even my kids refer to Sarah as my Sarah. I know she doesn't belong to me, but if I am ever having a hard time or I'm feeling really down or if I lash out at my kids will be like, Mom, you need to get on a call with your Sarah. So Sarah has been pivotal. I just made up a word, has been pivotal in my own life. And so I'm so excited for her to share her magic with you. So to start, Sarah, just tell us a little about who you are. Just basics about you or your family dynamics or where you're from, anything you feel like is important for us to know.
Okay. Well, I live in southern Utah, small town, Cedar City, Utah. I am married to my best friend. He's actually 11 years older than I am. And everything organically really just happened in our relationship. We have 3 beautiful girls and another girl on the way. She'll be here probably in the next month or so.
4 girls. So
I know,
exciting.
4 girls. It's great. And also, this is where I think it's huge for me, is that part of who Sarah is helping. I just see the goodness in women and in men too, but in women, I have healed so much of my own inner wounds that I feel so full of gratitude to be able to raise 4 strong, empowered women to know who they are instead of having other people tell them who they are.
Yeah.
And so there's like a huge giant binder full of Sarah's life and things that I could tell you who is Sarah. And really, I just want to say, just get to know me. What you see is what you get. I don't beat around the bush. I dive deep very quickly. I am not a superficial person. You can meet me and I'll be like, okay, so tell me your big T traumas. Let's
dive in.
Yeah.
But I think that's why I initially was so drawn to you and why I liked you. So I met Sarah at a women's retreat that I went to in Hawaii, and I met her, and she, the retreat was fun, but the best part about the retreat was that I met Sarah. And I remember right from the beginning, I was like, I like her. There's something special about her. And, we're figuring out, it's a big group of women. I'm trying to get to know people. And then there was this one moment, I don't even know if I've told you this. We were driving in a car somewhere and you were sitting behind me. We were in a van. And just everything you said, hit at my core. And I was like, I don't know who she is, but she's amazing. And then I learned that you did one-on-one work with clients and you did groups. So it was funny. I got home from that trip and I was talking about it with Tyler that night, and he was like, how was it? And I was like, it was good. It was really fun. I learned some stuff. I was introduced to breath work through you. And then I was like, and there's this girl, Sarah, and I don't know how, but I know I need to work with her. Literally 10 minutes later, you send a text out to the group and you're like, hey, if anyone's interested, I have one more spot in this group I'm doing, this Love Yourself course. And I I'm doing it. I don't even know how much it costs at this point, but I'm like, it's a full body, yes, I know that I have to work with you. And it's been over a year. Yeah. Has it been 2 in February?
2 will be February.
Oh my gosh. It's been almost 2 years. And so I knew right from the start that I needed you. So she's right. I feel when you get to know someone who's genuine and who is so self-assured and you are so strong in your knowing of who you are, that other people feel it, but it's not conceited. And I feel that's where growing up, that it got messy for me, where it was you have to be self-confident, but you don't want to be conceited. And you are someone that lives that self-confidence so fully, it's so beautiful that it's contagious. So how did you get there? Would you say, obviously there's so many things. You said a big binder full, but is there a final moment that really defines where you were like, okay, I know who I am now, and now I need to help people?
Mm-hmm. Well, I'm going to kind of backtrack because I don't feel like there was a final moment. of that, number one, thank you for sharing that, because that gave
Of
me cold
course.
chills. Because it really is, when you start living in alignment with your truth, you give other people permission to do the same.
Mm-hmm.
And one thing you will know about Sara is Sara gets very emotional. So there will probably be, and I'm pregnant, there will probably be times where I will feel a little emotional and get teary eyed. Okay. So
I'm a
just love
crier
me.
too. It's
Okay.
fine. Tears are welcome on the Illuminate podcast. They're fine.
Um, but there was a point, I had gone through a really big health journey, and I was very, very sick. I was put on bed rest for 6 months. And there was a point where I was told I wasn't going to have kids. I was told that this would probably be my life. I'd have these diagnoses the whole rest of my life. And I was literally laying there in bed pleading with God, like, I know that I am meant for so much more. Like, this is not my purpose. I am not supposed to be living with fibromyalgia. I am not supposed to be just in my bed this whole time. Like, I am meant for so much more. And it was that moment for me that I was like, I need to take control of my life instead of relying on other people to
Mm.
take control of my life. And that's how I've lived my life. I've always lived my life for other people. The people pleasing, growing up in a really strong organized religion, like, it was always a reward. I was always seeking the next thing. I always wanted to prove myself. I always wanted to be good enough for someone else
Yeah.
instead of myself.
Yeah.
And so I think that moment really woke me up. That was like the initial rise of Sara's healing journey of, okay, the only person that can actually heal myself is me.
Yeah.
It's not anybody else. I've given credit to other people, or I've wanted the validation from other people, but really it starts inside first.
Yeah.
And that, I would say that that was the journey. And then um, a few years later down the road, I was postpartum with my second baby. Really, really bad postpartum. I'm talking suicidal ideation, wanting me, literally counting cars as I was on a run to jump in front of a car.
Mm.
And through the grace of God and through angelic hands, push me back onto the side of the road. And during that moment, I knew that I wasn't the only one going through this, but I felt so alone. Like,
Yeah.
I think a lot of times, Sid, we feel alone in what we're going through, but really we know deep down, like, our spirits are the messengers relaying to us, like, you're actually not alone, but it feels like you're alone. Your brain is the thing that's telling you you're alone.
Yeah.
But during that time was that other moment of, I have to help other women learn how to get through this, because I have to get through this. Like, I, it was that point where I thought my family was going to be better off without me,
Mm.
that they'd be better off if I didn't exist, if I wasn't alive. And it was, yeah, it really was that moment for me that I sat in gratitude and also fear of the unknown, and knowing, though, a sense of my purpose and helping other people. Said something you've asked me, and it's always, I've always been like really quiet about this, because
Yeah.
I don't want to be prideful, but also I want to be give acknowledgement and acceptance of this. I have always had spiritual gifts, and I believe that we all do. I genuinely believe that all of us, when we are in alignment with our spirit and in alignment with knowing who God is and who we are, we will know what our gifts are. And so everything that I do is very, very intuitively, spiritually led and guided,
Yeah.
because that's one of my superpowers. That is definitely a
Absolutely.
spiritual gift
Yeah.
from God. So anyway, that kind of, hopefully that answered that question of, how
Absolutely.
did I even get started?
Well, and I'm so grateful. I got emotional when you were talking about that moment where there was like heavenly hands and angels, and I'm like, I'm so grateful because, like, truly, you know this. How I'm gonna cry. You have transformed my life in so many ways. There was years and years ago on a podcast where she talked about a cast of characters, how, like, if someone were playing a movie, who would be the pivotal people in your movie. And I've told this before. I'm like, Sara is one of my people. Like, you helped me tap into my own spiritual gifts. And as you were talking too about kind of that turning point where you're like, okay, I'm the only one that can heal myself. Something that you helped me understand, which is kind of like a crappy thing to learn in a way, because then it requires ownership, is like, I've been sourcing out my power to other people, but that means also sometimes I'm placing blame on other people when like I can't control them. I can only control me. So there's a little bit of like a it's like a hug with one hand and a slap with the other where it's like, okay, I can do this, but that also means like I can no longer blame others. So
Mhm.
with you coming back to your health and kind of coming back into those gifts that you've always had, have there been times where you still have like placed blame on others, or how have you more stepped fully into that role, if that makes sense?
That's a great question. I think, well, I guess I don't think this is something that I know. When we
You're a
I
knower. I feel like there's very few things that you say that I'm like, ah, she just made that up. I'm like, she knows that in her whole soul. Like God told her that directly to her heart, and she's told it to me.
this actually is true. Yes. I think there comes a point where I guess I see this with my clients, I see this in other people, and I'm very careful. Like I will never ever share something with somebody if I don't feel invited to, or share, like, I truly, one of my gifts is like I can look at you and know exactly what is going to help you. Um and that is a gift. That is a
How do
gift.
you what like how what does it look like? Does that make
Uh
sense?
Great question.
Like is it
I
just a knowing, or do you see like people talk about like, auras, people have a color. Like is that like what does it look like?
For me, it is, I wouldn't say it's an aura. I wouldn't say like I don't see the color. Like I can just see past what I see.
Past the
Does that make
physical
sense?
into the person.
Yes, into the person, into. So for me, I always use this term like it's a spirit to spirit connection.
Yeah. It is
Like
like
I
soul work what you do.
yes,
Yeah.
yes. Like it's not like, oh, I can literally just look past Sydney and be like, okay, I'm gonna look past her her hair, her whatever she's wearing, the outside appearances. I'm going to look inside of her soul. What does her soul actually need to help her heal?
Hmm.
And that's where that comes. And the majority of the time it is those practical solutions, right?
Yeah.
Because we're not doing them, or we're doing them in the wrong way that actually isn't feeding our soul and nourishing our soul in the way we actually need it. So
Hmm.
I feel like it comes to this, it all comes back to this piece of like, you first must accept it and allow it, and then everything else will fall into place. So when it comes to blame, um, I really liked to blame other people for my
Yeah.
traumas, for the things that happened to me, for, it was just easier. It's
It's
easier
it's
to
it's
blame
human
somebody else,
nature. Yeah,
right?
absolutely. Yeah.
Like I can think of, even on the daily, I can think of something that I'm like, oh, why isn't my husband doing the dishes? Well,
I
how
have
many dishes
never
go
had
for
that thought. I have
Sarah's?
never been mad about that.
Right? No, never. Never. But it's like, why am I placing blame when there is an allowance and an acceptance on my part? Like, Sarah, why didn't you put your dishes away to begin with? Right?
Yeah.
Like there's this fine line. Anyways, going back, I've learned probably the biggest thing for me is the mirror reflection. What you said, it's like you're giving yourself a hug and then a little smack in the butt or the
Yes.
back of the head on the other hand. Well, when I started looking at people and realizing that I'm just looking at myself, that's when things really changed for
Hmm.
me. That I can look at whoever it is that I'm struggling with, whether it be an in-law, whether it be mom, whether it be dad, whether it be my husband, I can look at them and be like, wait a second, there is actually a mirror reflection. What am I to learn about Sarah in all of this?
So let's give you a hypothetical. I was
Okay.
talking to someone about this concept the other day, and they're like, okay, so what if someone is like yelling at you? Like, what if someone is so frustrated and angry? Let's say it's like someone you don't know well. Like, the term people use is a Karen, right? Like, which all the poor Karens in the world that are nice, they got a bad rap now. But, like, let's say you're in the store and maybe you said something to someone and they did not like it, and they start like berating you or something. How do you flip that and make that a teaching lesson or something where it's about you and you're still in control? And because there are times where it's like, well, yeah, they're in the wrong, they shouldn't be yelling, right? But how kind of play that out for us, what that looks like.
Okay. So if that happened, which it has happened, and it will happen,
Absolutely.
it is life, and
Because
people
we're
get
all
mad,
humans.
and there's road rage, and people will flip you off, and then it makes you mad, and whatever the scenario, right? Whatever the scenario is, I love to almost come from a inner child approach. Anytime somebody is yelling, anytime somebody is frustrated, anytime somebody is having that anger, there is an unhealed part of them. They didn't get attention. Maybe they felt like, oh my gosh, the only way for me to be noticed, to be heard, to be seen is for me to yell.
So it lets you look at them through compassionate eyes.
Yes. With a genuine love.
Yeah.
With a genuine love, that it's like, the more that I have learned to love myself, the more that I have learned to love other people as they are. And it's like that compassion of, I don't see that adult that is yelling at me. I see that inner child that actually never got listened to, or maybe that inner child that got abused, or that adolescent who knows, right? There's so many different stories, and sure, I could make assumptions, but it's just a whole different level of compassion that you have as you go on this healing journey, because you're not seeing that person for the outside, you're seeing them for the inside.
Yeah.
The spirit.
Which is so beautiful and so powerful. And it's like, you can still have a boundary in that, right? And I don't like being talked to that way, or whatever it may be. But to see, the thing is, you're not going to change them regardless. Like, that's another thing you've helped me understand is I'm in control of me. Like, even my kids, I don't control them. Like, I have a false sense of control because they're small, but they're in control of what they do and how they move through the world and how they perceive it. And Tyler, I can't control him, right? I can't control my parents. I can't control any of those things. I can control how I react in situations with them. So yeah, there can be boundaries, but having those compassionate eyes helps me too, because it really does, like, as cliche as it might sound, like, the world just needs more love. And so having that shifts so many things. So you mentioned self-love. I didn't ask you, I didn't like text you this question, but you're a perfect person to answer it. I've been posting a little bit about this on my own Instagram, and just I'm thinking a lot about it, because I feel like the phrase self-love often gets classified as like bubble baths and time alone, which it definitely can be, right? It can definitely be like, some chocolate in the bath. But the type of self-love that you have, that you practice, that you help other women tap into, is like next level. So how would you describe self-love? Because it's true love of self. It's not just like doing something to your body.
Right.
Explain.
Yeah. Okay. This is honestly one of my favorite things. And that's kind of where I feel like I started, right? Because I feel like the spiritual world, and saying that you're like a spiritual healer and a spiritual guide, was very, a little bit more taboo, right? Because of the way we've grown up, or just the world in general.
Yes.
Because I
It's
never,
woo-woo, right? You're woo-woo.
Yes. And it's like so sacred to me. Like, I would never, ever, ever mistreat those gifts. It is so incredibly sacred to me. And so it's like, I've always struggled with even just telling people what I do or how I do it or things like that, because I don't want it to get misconstrued. I know that it will, but I'm just so passionate about it. And it is something that I hold so dear, that it's like, no, this is my power. This is God's power. Anyways, before kind of switching into, I guess, evolving into more of this Sarah I am today, I focus so heavily on the self-love. Because it's like, okay, if you can't love yourself, how in the hell are you going to learn to love other people? You cannot.
Your marriage will not ever succeed. You will not ever find fulfillment in motherhood. You will not ever move through the world with ease until you have love for yourself.
Exactly. You truly won't. And if somebody argues that, I usually will always say, then the type of love that you have for yourself is actually forced. And why I say that is because that is where then people are like, well, I'm doing the bubble baths, I'm exercising, I'm fueling myself, I'm giving myself all the nutrients that I need, I'm taking care of myself, right? Self-care.
Yeah.
People equate self-care with self-love, which is not wrong. However, true self-love is with a capital S, which is your soul.
Love yourself.
Which is your spirit, which is self-love. Like, it literally is an ingrained, rooted value of love that you have, instead of a reward, or instead of, if I do this thing, then I will have self-love.
It's not externally motivated.
No, it is 1000% internal.
Yeah.
And so I guess the easiest way for me to say this is true self-love is what is actually going to refuel and recharge you in mind, in body, and in spirit.
Hmm.
Because many people will just focus on self-care, meaning it's just going to refuel my
The
body.
body. Yeah.
And then in my mind, people focus on the mind and body so much without the spirit.
Yeah.
And self love will not happen, or it won't last long without that spirit piece.
Yeah.
So all three of them have to do it. So what refuels, recharges you in all three.
I love that.
Yeah.
It's beautifully said. And you brought up a really good point is part of that self-love is, yeah, it's not externally motivated, so it means loving all parts of you. And that's something I always I always say you're a good witch, right? When people are
Yeah.
like, what does she do? I'm like, she's a witch, but a good kind.
Mm-hmm.
She's Glinda. But that is something that you really cracked open for me, and a huge piece of my own transformation was the parts work that you do, inner child work. And I feel like inner child work is kind of, that's my chair. I don't know if you heard that squeak, but it was my chair. I'm not tooting. But it, I feel like inner child work is kind of like buzzing right now. Like I feel like there's a lot shifting around spirituality, and
Yeah.
naturally, I feel like I see a lot of it because that's like a lot of what the algorithm feeds me because it's what it knows I'm interested in, right? But I do feel like so many things are shifting for people where they're understanding more of like, wow, I have a power and I can work in conjunction with God, or maybe they're reevaluating that relationship totally, or what does God look like, or all these different things. But a huge piece of the inner child work is, I mean, it's transformative, right? It's like
Mhm.
it impacts not only what you're going through currently, but that self-love piece because you're able to actually love yourself. So we, how does, tell us a little bit about the inner child. Like how do you see that show up in your clients and people that you work with? Um, and what do you do to kind of heal those parts of you?
Mhm. What I see the most, and this was the same thing for Sarah, and as I learned how to work through it, it's way easier for my clients, but it's a reoccurring thing that when someone taps into inner child healing, there's actually a lot of shame and guilt with it for some reason.
Because of the
Um,
healing, or that comes up from the work
that
being
comes
done?
up. That
Okay.
comes up from the work being done. And this is obviously a perceived assumption on my part, but I can't help but feel that that is a lot of, if one of my clients, which the majority have grown up in an organized religion, a lot of that is uh, a little bit deeper than what they even think. So my clients will come in saying, I'm getting so angry at my husband for this thing. Like, why can't I do this? Or I'm having my postpartum anxiety and depression. Or um, why am I just completing these patterns? I'm doing it over and over again. I've worked so hard. I've done therapy. I've done coaching. Like, why am I still having these patterns?
Yes. Like, why am I still angry when I go to therapy? Why am I still lashing out when I do this? Why am I still sad when I'm going to the gym and doing the work and eating healthy and doing all the things, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And so I always, I mean, I think that that's something that I do, right? As the good witch, as kind
Yes.
of the good witch, is I literally will like, we will dissect this. We will dive so incredibly deep than the superficiality of what you actually think is the problem, because what you think is the problem isn't the problem at all.
Yeah.
It's something else. And the majority of the time, that shame and that guilt, that inner child just needs to be seen and heard and
Yeah.
listened to. And what's unfortunate is our parents aren't going to give that to us. They did the best they can with what they knew how to do. Um, and that is like some people, it's unfortunate, but at the same time, as an individual today sitting here, if you were my client sitting there, you are the one that is in charge of reparenting your inner
Mm-hmm.
child instead of putting that blame or that desire onto your parents. We can't change the past. We can't
Yeah.
change what has happened to us, right?
It's where
But
that
what we
dang
can,
ownership comes in again. And you're like, damn
1000%.
it. Oh,
It is.
fine.
It's the accountability and the ownership, but these little children haven't learned to trust.
Yeah.
I can say that the majority of us probably have trust issues.
With ourself or with others?
Both,
Both.
because it will mirror both,
Hmm.
right? That if you have trust issues with yourself, or let me rephrase, if you have trust issues with other people, you have it with yourself,
Yeah.
period.
Yeah.
Like your inner child, this is where, let's say, okay, Sydney comes to me, is having some problems, and Sydney's like, why can't I wake up in the morning? Why can't I do a morning routine? Something so superficial,
Yeah.
right? Well, it also is going to stem back to Sydney's trust issues. Then with her husband says that he's going to take out the trash. Well, he forgot to take out the trash, asks Sydney to do it. There's a lack of trust, right? Like any little thing that we say we do, I'm getting a hot flash right now. Can you tell? Whew, sorry. My face is like red right now.
It's the trash.
And
The trash topic really gets you going.
no, so anything that we say we do, our inner child is actually going to be the one to take a tally. It's not
And it's
this
because
brain.
that's when, just brain wise, everything is formed, right? Is
Yep.
primarily the first, is it 1 through 6?
Yeah. So like so there's different stages
Yeah.
within your brain of what developmentally
I
takes
used
place
to
during
know
that.
all the years and like what
Yeah.
like the cutoffs were, and it's
Yeah.
gone
So
now.
like 1 through 6 is and we can say like more like 1 through 4.
Yeah.
That's where they're going to be building trust. That's where they're going to be building safety. That's when they're going to be building, do I trust myself?
Yeah.
Body safety, right? Like that's when kids experiment. That's when they jump off of couches, that, all of that stuff. And then usually about 6 through 8 is their self-esteem.
Mm.
So kids' self-esteem is going to be there. And that's where it's a very pivotal time as a parent for you to instill that self-esteem, that self-trust, that self-love in
Yeah.
them, that self-integrity of, hey, you know what? I'm not proud of you, but are you
How do
proud of
you
you?
feel? Yeah.
How do you feel about this? Yeah. So, but I do want to backtrack just a little bit, that it's like this, going back to the trash piece, every little thing that we say or that we don't say, our inner child is taking place. And when I say inner child, I'm not just talking about the ages of 1 through 6 or 1 through 12. I'm
Yeah.
talking about literally that your adolescent years, like any past part of you is considered inner
Inner
child.
child.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
When it comes to parts work, basically.
Well, and I think it's so interesting. Something that when we worked together that was really like eye opening was you hear about like big T trauma and little T trauma, right? Like there's the big things that you think about, abuse or um, death or just all the like moving. There's all these big ones, right? And then there's these little T traumas. And what I didn't realize was how many of the behaviors I was frustrated with. The reason I went to in the first place, like I'll just share for me, one thing was I had a lot of rage. Like felt like I was a ragey mom where I was like quick to yell and be angry. And I'm like, I'm not like an angry person. Like that's not how I move through the world. That's not how I perceive myself. And that's not how I want to be. And so I came to you with that. And so thinking, this is the anger. Here's going to be the problem. It's going to be that I need to do more of this or do more X or more Y, and then I'll have less anger. Well, then we started getting into the work, and it was like, no, there are some things that happen younger that made me feel not in control and not heard. So when I'm in a current situation where I feel not in control and not heard, I'm quick to anger because when I was younger, that's what happened. And
Mhm.
so I'll just share, maybe it'll help people understand. So like a little T trauma, like there was this in the work that we did, there was this time where you were guiding me through like this beautiful meditation, and this thing came to my mind, and it was when I was younger. I was in kindergarten, and there were some neighbors that were all playing, and they wouldn't let me in the room, and my older sister was with them, and they were just being kids, right? But they like kept slamming the door and didn't let me in. I had not even thought about that memory like since it happened. But
Yeah.
in doing this, I was like, whoa, that is something that has shaped me. And for me, that was shaping my sense of belonging, where it's like I don't
Mhm.
belong. I'm not one that gets to be invited in. I have to push my way in, right? To be accepted. So that was showing up in so many ways where I was like, okay, I don't belong. I'm too loud. They don't want me in there. Didn't even realize it was this one silly moment that guarantee none of these other girls have even ever thought about. They probably don't even remember. But for me, my younger self held on to that and let that shape and become a core memory of I don't belong. I
Yep.
don't belong. I'm too loud because they don't want me in. And then I
Mhm.
was minimizing my voice. I was making myself smaller in social settings. I was trying to push my way into groups that seemed like it would be where I found belonging when it wasn't where I actually needed it. So it's like that was so powerful to uncover that.
Yeah.
So
There's a big difference between fitting in and belonging,
Mm.
right? And that's, I think our inner children in all of us want to belong. Like we belong, period. But there's
Yeah.
this messaging that we've received over and over and over again that we actually don't belong. We don't belong anywhere. We don't belong anywhere. In reality, we do belong as long as we are right here,
Yeah.
like at home in ourselves. And um, you don't need to force yourself into any situation. You don't need to force yourself into fitting in because there is that really big difference. That's probably been one of my favorite things I've ever studied is the difference between fitting in and belonging.
Mm.
And so, and I just want to say true authenticity, when someone is being authentic and truly authentic, there is a sense of belonging, not fitting in, because then
Mm.
you're not people pleasing and you're not morphing yourself to be somebody else. That is when authenticity really takes place. And that is when true belonging sits in, because then you are sitting in your own sovereign, authoritative power
Yes.
of self.
Yes.
So I want to clear the air with this,
Yes.
that if you are doing inner child work, the best like place to start is start keeping promises to yourself.
Mm.
If you say you're going to do something,
I was
follow
gonna ask
through
him
with
like,
it.
what's a starting point? If you're like, oh my gosh, that seems big, that seems scary. Yeah.
But it literally is as simple of, okay, if you say I'm going to exercise every single day this week, not even making it that big, exercise every single day. Keep that promise, because then you are building trust in yourself, and as you build trust in yourself, you're building trust in other people.
Mm.
And it's this ripple effect, right? um but it's, if you feel like you need more water, start drinking more water. Keep that promise to yourself. Like, it is the little self-care things that we do that refuel and recharge us that will actually connect us to that self-love of all of our parts.
Yeah. So let's say someone is feeling very lost. Like that's something that I feel like people are like, I don't even know. Like you're talking about being authentic or you're talking about living in alignment. What does that even mean? Like,
Mhm.
how do I do that? What if I don't know who I am? I feel like we get stuck in that cycle. And I feel like there's once again a lot of talk about people like find your passion, you'll never work a day in your life, or find who you are and you'll light people up. But it's like I feel like a lot of people get stuck on the like, okay, who am I? And
Mhm.
so where do they start or how do you figure out who you are?
Hey, I would actually say that's probably the biggest question that I get with all my clients is, I don't even know who I am.
Yeah,
Or we start doing this work and things start unraveling and they start realizing things and they're like,
because
who
they've
am
been
I
lost
without this
for a
piece?
while. Yeah.
Yeah. And I'm going to offer a reframe, because I don't think there's, and I will take full accountability for this. I always use this term. I lost myself in motherhood.
Mm-hmm.
However, that is actually where I found myself,
Mm-hmm.
right? Is because I actually doing something hard, doing something that I didn't expect. I expected it to be totally different. My whole life, I wanted to be a mom. And then when I became a mom, I was like, this is not what I signed up for.
Yeah.
Like, this is not what I imagined motherhood would be. And
Where's
realizing
the where's the glamour?
that, yeah, yeah. But it's like, it's so different. And so it just recognizing that motherhood is a relationship that you have. Like, truly, motherhood is a relationship. And guess what? You are not going to enjoy motherhood if you do not have a good relationship with yourself.
Yeah.
You
Mm.
guys, it comes right back, right? Like, if you're feeling lost in motherhood, yeah, it's because you don't know who you are.
Yeah.
Truly, truly. And so, how does somebody know who they are? This is just the simplest, easiest way, kind of superficial. I'm sorry. How do you get to know someone? You start asking them questions, right? You literally start sitting with yourself.
It might be simple, but it is very powerful when
It is
applied.
so powerful.
Yeah.
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 And I'm like, we can even probably provide like a list. I'm trying to think if I have a freebie or something that we could give your listeners. I'm sure I have one somewhere of like soul questions that you can start
Yes.
asking to get to know yourself better. Maybe remind me on
Yeah.
that. But the best way to get to know
Putting
yourself
a note.
is to ask yourself questions. Ask yourself the deep questions. Even if it is like, what's your favorite color? Because maybe somebody told you what your favorite color had to be your whole life, right? Because you're a girl. it had to be pink.
Yeah.
No, maybe you liked blue and red and black,
Yeah.
whatever, right? It's asking yourself questions and sitting with yourself. I cannot get to know somebody. It's getting off of this device, number
Yes.
one.
Getting your
Okay.
phone out of your
Yes.
hand. Yeah.
Out of your hand, putting it away so that you can sit with yourself. But I like, think about it. We're in a room, say we're at a party. Okay. We're at a party and we only have one job at this party, and it's to get to know one new person. Okay.
Yeah.
But there's so many people at this party. There's like 20 people at this party. And it's like, but I want to get to know everybody. And so you feel overstimulated. You start asking people superficial questions. How are you doing? Oh, I'm doing good. Thanks. I'm doing fine. How are you doing?
Yeah.
And it takes you forever to get to that one person. And by that time, you only have like 5-10 minutes.
Yeah.
Well, that is what we are doing with ourselves.
Hmm.
Every single day we are giving, we are doing stuff for other people. And then by the end of the day, it's like, oh, well, I guess I have maybe 5 minutes to get to know myself.
Yeah.
When in reality, no, go and talk to that person first. Go and be with yourself first so that you then have more to give to other people.
Which, side note, then in that 5 minutes that we're giving, how often are we numbing out in that time?
Yes.
Right? We're picking up the phone. We're putting on the TV. We're reading sometimes. Anything can be an escape. And so often these things are subconscious because I believe, as I know you do too, that we all have such a unique power and mission that only we can do.
Yep.
And I believe that many people on a subconscious level know that and are a little bit afraid. And so we do other things that prevent us and step in our way from reaching that potential. And it's oftentimes good things, right? Like it's taking care of our families, and it's cleaning up after all the kids are down, and it's all those kinds of things. Those are not bad things.
Right.
But when we're using them as a method to avoid facing who we are and what we need, then that's a problem. Right. And it's like, I know that like there's jokes I feel like about like rage cleaning. I am 100%, I go into rage cleaning mode for sure.
Same.
But I now will pause often. I'm like, okay, what is actually the issue? It's not actually that my kids are in a craft stage and there is tiny little pieces of shiz everywhere. Like it's that's not the real issue. What is it? And once again, for me, a lot of times I'm like, oh, it's that I don't feel in control and I don't feel safe in my setting. And that's something that when I was younger was really big, was to feel in control, because there were times where I felt out of control, right? Or got labeled for being out of control, and it was a negative thing. So it's like, okay, then I'm like, okay, pause, take a moment. I'll like take a beat. Like I did this the other day. I was literally like, I was mad. I was like cussing under my breath. I was like, piece of shit, and no one knows how to clean up anything, and all these stupid kids and the stupid husband. I was just like
Do it
pissed.
all.
And
Yeah.
I was tripping over Ty's size 14 shoes like repeatedly. And I'm like, these freaking shoes, and he has so many of them. I'd throw them in the garbage. I was just so mad. And I started like just cleaning and wiping. I was just shoving stuff. And then I paused and I was like, okay, what is actually the problem? I like took some deep breaths, put my hand on my heart, and I was like, I just don't feel in control. I feel really out of control, and that's making me feel like I can't connect. I'm like, okay, so at the root of the issue, I was not feeling connected was the root issue. So instead of cleaning and rage cleaning, I went downstairs and I played with my kids, like real play. Like I didn't have my phone, I didn't do anything. And I felt so like, oh. And then I went back up and I cleaned up, and it was like not this ragey, chaotic thing, but I'm like, it just took a little bit of discomfort to be like, and that ownership piece of like, okay, I'm trying to push this on other people. I'm acting out what is it inside that I need. What does little Sydney need? And she just needed a little bit of connection. She needed to play for a minute, you know?
Yeah. And then everything changed, right? Once you
Yes.
did that. So it's like when we actually take that time to sit with ourselves, to ask ourselves the question of what is actually going on? What do I actually need in this very moment? Oh, connection, right? Like, and some people, there is a source that I often use. It's called the Hoffman's feelings list. Okay. And it has your feelings list and it has body sensations according to that feeling. Okay. Which is very powerful because, right, a lot of people will be like, oh, I just feel angry.
Yeah.
But really deep down under that angry, it's actually a different emotion, and your body's going to respond to it in a different way. And you want to do something that is actually going to help you do that. So Sydney's like, okay, I feel out of control. When Sydney feels out of control, she actually just needs connection.
Yeah.
What is the one thing that she can do that is going to bring in connection for her? And in that very moment, she went and made that choice to go and connect with her kids.
Yeah.
And guess what? I guarantee because of that one choice that you made, your children felt more connected. Therefore, they probably didn't bother you as much. They
Yeah.
probably felt better. Their nervous systems were co-regulated because you did that one thing.
Yeah. They were not like, oh my gosh, mom is losing it, hide. They were
Yeah.
like, mom's playing. And I could tell it did throw like Beckham for a piece, like, hi mom, you're playing with us? And I'm like, yes, I am playing with you. I need it. But she was like, okay, now I'm good. Now I'm okay.
Yeah. So I think it is. It really is. It all goes back to that getting to know yourself on a deeper level, because too often times, right? You said we avoid. I think people are afraid to sit with themselves because they are afraid of what's going to come up,
Hmm.
because we haven't dealt with a crap in the past.
Yeah.
We haven't acknowledged the hurt or the pain, the big T trauma, the little T trauma that happened in kindergarten that you may never have even thought
Yes.
actually affected you, but it did. Like, we are so afraid of the past, which causes people to be anxious for the future.
Yes.
So if you struggle with anxiety, guess what? I will so lovingly tell you this, that you are not trusting the process and flow of life
Yeah.
from the past, the present, and the future.
Yeah.
Therefore, yeah, you are going to struggle with anxiety. There's shiz from the past that you have to deal with.
Yes. And same with
And your
depression in a
anxiety.
lot of ways.
Oh, all of it.
You're living in the past of things you can't control.
Mm-hmm.
The only way out of depression and anxiety from a spiritual standpoint are sitting in the present, right?
Yep.
Controlling those things that you can control. We've talked a lot
Mm-hmm.
about that control piece. And
Yep.
not in like a control freak way, but like in the I have control over my body. I have, that sovereign
It's
accountability,
the
right?
accountability. Yep. The ownership. Yep.
Yes, that is what lets you move out of anxiety because you're not stressed about the future. You're trusting yourself that you will know what to do when the time comes. And
Yeah.
and it's a muscle, right?
Mm-hmm.
As you work and refine it and live in the present now, then it makes it easier so that you can move out of the past. And instead of living in the past filled with regret or that shame that you talked about, you're giving that past version of yourself love, and it
Yes.
changes the present moment, which then changes the future. It's such a
Yes.
cool, like that. It sounds so simplified, but it is so transformative that I'm like, it is so powerful. Like it cannot be, it just feels understated to be like,
Mm-hmm.
give yourself that love and then you'll move out of depression or anxiety. But it's like, no, it really will.
No, you really will. Every physical symptom that you have, and this is a big part of, I guess, what I do with people is like every physical symptom that you have, whether it be a headache, whether it be an eye twitch, a sty, your freaking muscle spasms, like whatever physical symptom you have, there is an emotional probable cause that is tied to it.
Yes.
Your body is always trying to talk to you. Your
Yes.
body is always trying to signal to you. Your period being one of the biggest things, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
there are so many things that God created us to have to communicate to
Yes.
us
As
of,
tools.
as tools of how we actually are doing, instead of, I don't know. I'm so passionate about that because I need people to know a headache is as simple as you feeling out of alignment.
Yeah.
It's a type of self-betrayal. Whether you have a headache that day and guess what? You didn't give yourself enough love and attention that day.
Yeah.
And I'm not kidding. I'm not exaggerating. Like
Or
that
maybe
is,
you're berating yourself in your mind over something that you did or a past
yes,
decision that you made and you're living in guilt or something like that.
criticizing yourself
Yes.
and calling yourself like, oh my gosh, I'm so stupid. Like it's those little things that we can work on that make the biggest difference. It
Yeah.
really is.
Yeah.
So yeah, I wanted to share that because I'm like, people need to know that a sty represents something, an earache represents something, like every little thing. And if you've ever done breath work, where you tingle in your body also is a huge sign of what you're holding on to and what's being
Yes.
repressed.
Yes.
So there's lots to dig deep into.
As I was saying, I feel like we need 100 episodes.
I know we can.
We just need
I
to go on a
absolutely.
week-long trip and just record the whole thing and then just share it.
Absolutely.
It
And
might
then
get
a
a
week
little
later, we'll be
spicy.
like, oh, there's actually more to this too, by the way. So, no,
Oh,
yeah, this healing journey is so beautiful. And I love guiding people through it because it's waking them up to who they really are.
so do
And
you
it's
call
helping them
yourself a
find,
healer? now?
I would. Yeah.
I would
Like,
say you're a healer.
yeah,
Absolutely.
I absolutely would. And um, obviously not taking the role of God's power of healing, but I definitely believe that God has given people unique gifts to help his mission of healing, right? Their mission
Yes.
of healing. And so, yeah, so
Well,
I
that's
definitely
something
think so.
you do beautifully. Like you just said, you're helping them essentially heal themselves.
Yeah.
You're like the guiding hand that helps them do that,
Yeah.
but you're not sitting there taking the credit, being like,
Right.
I caused that. And maybe
Right.
sometimes you do be like, hey, good job, me. Because you should. You should be like, hey, I did pretty good at that one. But so what? I mean, we've talked about like so many things, but what? So we talk a lot about self love, right?
Mhm.
What for you is like a non negotiable, something that like fills your cup, lights you up, something that you need daily, maybe?
Mhm. Mhm. Okay, time by myself, honestly, but it is doing something that refuels and recharges me. So I created a what I call a nervous system regulation basic course, basically. Like I
It's
do a
not
course.
basic.
I I know. I have a course that is like super intense, goes into science, goes into all the things individually, like all of that. I have a course for that. It's called Nervous System Overhaul, which I'll be launching again next year. But I created it's called the Nervous System.
Yeah.
Okay. And it's 5 things that you can do every single day. And it's not super time consuming because the purpose of doing things that refuel and recharge you is to do them when you're already doing something, right? You don't want to just add. I think that that's where a lot of people get hung up on is, well, I don't have time to be by myself.
Yes. Yes.
Uh, are you in carpool lane?
Yeah.
You have time,
Yeah.
right? Like we have moments, but we're not choosing to spend that time with ourselves. And so there's these 5 things, and I have a free guide that anybody can go and download on my
I'll
Instagram.
link it. Yeah.
But it's a small little daily breathwork practice. Our breath is one of the most powerful things that we can use to actually tap into us. We are too much of shallow breathers,
Yeah.
which means as we are living this life and the more shallow we breathe, guess what? The less presence we will have.
Yeah.
So your breath brings you back to present. And then I have a part of this is meeting with God. I believe in God. I believe in a higher power. And I believe that when we are in tune with ourselves, we will be way more in tune with God. And is movement. The next one is movement, like movement outside. It has to be movement outside.
Yeah.
We are
Even in
made
the
to
cold.
be out.
As
Yeah.
it's literally snowing in Utah. I'm like,
Snowing. Yeah. Yep. Movement outside, because that movement and the nature, the best way, and I feel like I say this every podcast I'm on, but it's true. Like I can't not say this. The best way to get to know God is by starting at the creation.
hmm,
Literal nature, going out in
yes.
nature, going out in earth, going out, touching the rocks, putting yourself out there. And the best way to get to know yourself is to get to know God.
Yeah.
Okay. Like
Yeah.
but it starts there. So that movement outside, we are people who have trained ourselves to be inside, which is a huge result of all of our health problems and all of our insecurities and mental health crap, right?
Yes. Yes.
We're supposed to be outside.
Yeah.
So movement
Like
outside, whether that's,
eyeballs on the sun, feet
Mhm.
touching the earth.
Yes,
Yes.
yes. Little things, right? It doesn't have to be like, I'm going to go and do my full exercise routine outside.
Or
It's amazing if you
sun
do
my
that.
bum hole like that.
Yes. Yeah,
Those are
like
all good
whatever,
things though.
yeah, whatever you need, it just has to be outside. Okay?
Yeah.
Whatever you do, there's no such thing as bad weather, just bad preparation.
Hmm.
That's what I say. No such thing
That's
as bad
good.
weather, bad
I
preparation.
love that. I saw something the other
Yes.
day that it just said you can complain. Oh, you can complain about the snow all you want, but you will still have the same amount of snow and less joy in your life. And I was
Yes.
like, that is what I'm taking into my first Utah winter in a very long time. That's the mentality I'm taking. So
Yeah.
today it snowed, and I had so much joy. And my kids were like, "It's snowing." I'm like, "Absolutely, so catch it one of those fluffy flakes on our tongue." So I was like, I could complain and be like, "Oh my gosh, the snow," and I still don't have my garage clean to park my car, so I got to scrape my car. But I'm like, no, like regardless, the snow's still going to be there. Like even if I choose to
Hmm.
complain.
Hmm.
So movement outside, no
You
bad
can't
weather.
control that.
No, no,
Yeah, you can't
I'm not
control
God.
that. You can
Yeah.
control you and the way you respond and react, right?
Yes.
Like
Yes.
you can't control that. So there's no such thing as bad weather, only bad preparation. You can
I
go
love
out
that.
and do that. Obviously, use your common sense, please. Like
Yeah.
don't don't be dumb.
Yeah.
Don't be dumb. Like let me just
I
say
only
that,
have smart
okay?
people to listen. It's fine.
Yes. Yes. And then the next one is gratitude. Gratitude changes behavior faster than behavior will change behavior.
Mm.
Okay, let me restate
Say
that
that
because
again. Yes.
I think it's very important. Gratitude changes behavior faster than behavior changes behavior. So if you are wanting to change something about a habit that you do or a routine of yours or things like that, we focus so much on the behavior of what we're doing and how we're doing it
Yeah.
instead of focusing on the gratitude behind it.
Mm.
So gratitude will change behavior faster.
So do you recommend a gratitude journal? Just saying it out loud, just thinking it?
Either way, I'm a visual learner,
Yeah.
right? And so I love something that's visual. So I love writing it down. And on my freebie too, like I have a little gratitude journal thing that if you're the same, you can write it down too. But just even vocalizing it, acknowledging it, accepting it, vocalizing it out loud. A lot of us are so blocked on our throats. And so the more you can vocalize things out loud, the better
Yeah.
because you're speaking with gratitude instead of with anger, with frustration. It's going to change differently.
I
So it'll
love
be
that.
different. And then just the last part is meditation.
Mm.
It doesn't have to be like the sitting and
Yeah.
it doesn't have to be that sort of meditation. You can do walking meditations, you can do driving meditations, there's a variety of meditation and it doesn't have to be necessarily for a certain amount of time. I have time blocks for each of these that
Yeah.
I have found most helpful. Um, but it is just, and all of these, you can do all of them at the same time.
Yeah.
Like I could be outside talking to God, connecting with my breath, meditating as I'm on a walk, and I have all of them. And so when you say like what's the one thing that's non-negotiable for you,
Yeah.
it's all of these, but I make sure that I do them all together.
That's awesome.
Makes
Well, and
sense?
I think a
So,
big thing is the intention behind it. That's something
yes.
for a long time I thought I was, quote unquote bad at meditating because I thought I had to turn my brain off. I was
Yeah.
like, oh, I have to sit with like a nothing brain. And I'm like,
Right.
my brain doesn't function like that. And then
Uh-huh.
I was like, oh, that's not it. And the purpose of meditation is to allow for a pause to observe my thoughts without judgment. And so
Mhm.
a big thing is, yeah, as you're doing these things for your nervous system, what's the intention behind it? It's like if you're doing it, it's like, I gotta get these 5 things done. Oh my gosh, guess what? That's not serving your nervous system. But if
No.
it's like, you know what? All I have time for right now is dinner's in the oven. I'm gonna stand on the porch in the sunlight for 5 minutes and breathe, or 2 minutes and breathe. That does more than being like, I didn't do the fifth one today. Oh my gosh, I didn't get it done, right? It allows for that presence and that connection to self. And yeah, it's very
And
powerful.
there's that difference of self-love, right?
Yes.
You're just doing to do instead of doing to be.
Yes. Oh,
And
yeah.
so that's what we're wanting to actually follow through with is you want to be
Yes.
the whole purpose of these things, everything that we are doing is to actually be.
To become and be. Let me
Yep, to
put that on
become.
plaque. That used to be in someone's kitchen somewhere.
Yeah.
That's good.
Yeah.
Get rid of live, laugh, love. Put some Sarah quotes on those things.
I love it. I would be honored.
Yeah. So my final question for you is, what is one thing you wish everyone knew about their own inner light? We've talked about so many things. We've talked about so much self-love, and I feel like the things we've talked about, it's like just this casual conversation, but I'm like, oh, I just hit my computer. I am feeling passionate. Like they
Yes.
are transformative. I feel like it's yeah, it's easy to talk about because I've worked it with you, so I'm like it's very comfortable. But I'm like
Yeah.
if people knew, which some people do know, where I started versus where I am now, I
Hmm.
think I don't know. It's just wild to me. So I'm like, yeah, we're talking about it so casually, but I'm like, these are life changing things. These are
Yeah.
life changing tidbits. So what's
Yeah.
one thing you wish everyone could know? Maybe every woman, because you do work with men and women, but especially women. So one thing for every woman.
Mm. Okay. I want this to be like deep, you know?
You're never deep.
Okay. There's two things. One, your light is always there. It is never actually put out. It is never diminished. Um, it's always there. It always exists. there may be a lot of darkness around the light, but it still is there, and that light is still giving light to the darkness.
Mm.
It still is enough to light the darkness, to light a way, to light a path. So yeah, so I think that your light is always enough. And you
Beautiful.
are exactly enough as you are. Like God, nothing can take away that light. No event, no person, no place, no thing. Nothing can take away the light that is instilled inside of you.
I love that. And one thing you shared with me recently that it was like a moment for me was by dimming your own light, you're just making others walk in darkness.
Yeah.
So it's like if once you uncover your own and you're shining brighter than if you're worried about pleasing others or catering to them or shining your true self, you're like, oh, I don't want to make other people comfortable. All you're doing is making more people walk in darkness when you could be illuminating the path for others, which
Yeah.
is something, like I said right at the beginning, that you as Sara do so beautifully is you live in that light and it just paves the way for others. I didn't even know what you did and I knew I had to work with you. I just
Mhm.
knew I needed more of you in my life because you gave me permission to shine and have my own light, which was beautiful. So
Yeah.
I'm forever grateful for you. I'm so grateful for you to come on this podcast. Also, just that you're in my life and I love you.
I
And is
love
there anything else you need to say before we end?
I want people to know that they really are loved. And I I always tell people legitimately, like, one thing that I hope is said at a funeral of mine is that you never left Sara without knowing that you were loved by her.
Mm,
Like, I will always tell people that they are loved because I feel like that is part of my purpose,
yeah.
is to let people know that they are loved exactly as they are, no matter what they're going through. And that they're seen and that they're noticed. Like, they are loved. And if I can have that love for a stranger, I know that they can have that love for themselves
Mm.
too. So
Thanks,
that's
Sara.
all. So
Love
I love
you.
you.
Love you
I love
too. The best.
you. Thanks for having me.
Of course. So thank you so much for tuning in and listening to my conversation with Sara. Thank you to Sara again for coming on and sharing your light and your wisdom and your goodness. If you want to work with Sara, I will tag her Instagram handle or I'll put it in the show notes and her website. I know she's kicking off her nervous system course at the beginning of 2025, and she's also doing a fun end of year challenge to keep your nervous system nice and regulated through the holidays. It can be a stressful time. And I just know from my own experience that anything she touches turns to magic, including your life. So let me know if you liked it. Drop a review if you get a second. And don't forget to follow along so you don't miss future episodes. We'll see you next week.